So today we're going to talk through the Zowie shape kits. They're not normally available in the UK, so I want to say a big thank you to Zowie for breaking their own rules. I love that energy. Thanks again, Zowie, for sending it over. So I will be sending it back shortly. They've not bribed me off here, so just bear that in mind. There's a link in the description which will talk you through how this kit works. I'm not really interested in sitting here and telling you what the rules are, how much it costs, and what happens if you don't return all the mice, you thieving bastards. But what I am interested in is telling you about my experience with this shape kit and how it's helped me to understand a little bit about the Zowie shapes, which I wasn't familiar with particularly before, and some of the features of the Zowie mice, which sometimes are a contentious topic. How's weight? So I'll start off with my general observations on the Zowie mouse line, and there's a few of them, so stay tuned and we'll get into the shapes, a brief overview of the shapes towards the end of the video. So I want to talk firstly about the mouse weight, and as someone that has mained a mouse that is 36 grams, going from 36 grams to about 80 grams in some of these models can sound like quite a big jump, but I honestly didn't notice the weight as much as I thought I would. And I put that down to the exceptional weight balancing that Zowie have achieved with these mice, and also just the quality of the mice, and I don't know, maybe I'm just not as weak as some of you in the community. Trigger warning, by the way. But I find the weight sometimes to be beneficial for me, rather than necessarily a hindrance. And while I see there are pros to lighter weight mice, you know, you can react faster, you can flick faster, you also get some of that shakiness in your aim that you might not get with a heavier mouse. So I quite enjoyed the heavier Zowie mice. I like that there's a heavy option on the market for people like me that aren't full-time, you know, 10-hour-a-day gamers that have all that time, all that skill in their aim. They just want something that can almost like help them a bit with their aim, you know? And that's kind of the effect I had with the additional weight. Going from a really lightweight mouse to a really heavy mouse, although it's not really heavy, but was that it kind of just helped smooth out my aim a bit. It gave me a lot more consistency in some aim scenarios, which I really appreciated. So I want to talk a bit about the sizes that are available in the Zowie shape kit. There are 4 different lines available, product lines, and in most cases there are 3 different sizes in each line. So what that means for me is, you know, I've got an option here with this shape kit to really find the one that works well for my aim style. And as someone that's a fingertip aimer normally, I think probably because I've played historically with really small mice, I was surprised to have gravitated towards the larger mice. And I think that's because the larger mice fill my hand. You know, it's like an appropriate size mouse for my hand. And since this kit has arrived, I've been using the large mice predominantly in claw, and I use the EC1 in palm sometimes, which is the first time I palmed anything. And I've really enjoyed that experience, actually. So I think if you have large hands, you can probably get away with using the large, the mediums, and the small sizes in this kit. Just be aware that the smaller you go, the more mouse control you'll be required to have, the more sort of maneuverability in your hand you'll have too. And you know, that's something that you find someone like Fresh Reviews, he talks about a lot, that inner hand maneuverability. He doesn't necessarily, I don't think, value a mouse that fills his hand entirely, because he can't move it around with his fingers within his palm. Whereas if you go towards the smaller side of these mice, you'll have that extra room within your hand to move it around with your fingertips, which I think is a good thing. For me personally, I quite like, at the moment anyway, you know, things change, I quite like having the larger mice in my hands to use and to fill it all entirely so it feels super consistent, super locked in. There's no like variance in grip because it just always kind of fits the same way. And I quite like those large mice for that reason. What I would say though is that small hand users, you probably wouldn't want to go too high up that scale. You probably want to stop at the medium size. You know, the large mice are actually quite large and they're just probably not going to work for you. And you'll find that you probably won't be able to have a comfortable grip on there and reach all of the buttons, you know, like someone like myself with bigger hands would achieve. So the final point I'd like to make on the size of the mice is that the large products I found to be really useful for getting more feedback from the pad as well. So I like that a lot. I use hard pads typically, and I value getting feedback from the pads, which is part of the reason why I like using the large ones here. He likes a large one. Hey-o. So I want to talk a bit about the coating, and it is quite glossy, which means it will attract fingerprints. I don't really care about that personally, but some of you probably will, so you have to consider that. The thing that surprised me most about the coating was how sticky it was. You know, it was really grippy. I'm quite a hot guy, like I'm quite a clammy kind of, I sweat a lot. And I found that it kind of, the sweat from my hand kind of created this like bond with the mouse, which is the first mouse that I haven't had to use grip tape on, which is really nice actually. You know, I do like using grip tape. You know, you can't beat a nice super grip tape on a mouse, but you just don't need it, in my opinion, with the Zowie mice. I'd say if you were a really kind of like the opposite to me, if you were like a dry person, you didn't sweat very much at all, then you may struggle, in which case just stick some grip tape on. There's no issue with that. I've got a bit of a weird observation here, and I just want to say the mice shapes all feel quite organic. And I guess what I mean by that is they all just feel a bit natural. They don't feel too, you know, overly engineered. They're all very smooth. All the curves are just, you know, they're beautiful on these mice. And my experience with other mice is they don't always feel that organic. You know, a lot of them have got holes in these days. You know what? It's my own fault. I opt for the hole versions because they're lighter. But I find these mice feel exceptional in the hand. And the best way to describe it for me, the best word is organic. They just feel like something that's, you know, like natural. Going on slightly from the way that they feel, I also want to talk about the hips on the back end of these mice. So I think the community commonly refers to it as, you know, the comfort grooves, but the hips towards the back, they're all just really well implemented. They're super useful, very, very comfortable to use. I find in each version of the mouse, I have a really nice area to slot my thumb into. And on the right-hand side, I can use my fingers really well in the position that the mouse is designed for. They just work. They're really comfortable. I've not gripped any of these mice and felt like they'd made a mistake with the implementation here. I also want to talk a bit about the build quality. And my experience with Zowie mice is that they're just completely unshakable. They're really solid, and the quality is exceptional. The clicks feel really good to me. The scroll wheel is great too. I really like the scroll wheel. I know some people don't like it because it is so defined, and you can probably hear it from there, but I don't mind that. I think it's quite good because everything you do on these mice, you do it with purpose. You know, they're competitive mice. They're designed for people that compete. I don't really compete. I'm just competing for that 1.0 KD at the moment. We won't talk about that. But the point is, I quite like it. The side buttons are pretty good. The side buttons are better on the wireless revisions of the mice, but they're still usable on the wired versions. So, you know, if you're considering picking up one of these wired, there's no issue with the button implementation in my experience. And then finally, you know, get your pitchforks out. I want to talk a bit about value for money. So before we go into the next section, I just want to clarify that when I talk about whether this mouse or this product is value for money or not, I'm talking specifically about the wireless release of these mice. I have confused it in this recording, and I hope that this little inject of editing helps to clarify exactly what it is I'm talking about here. And I understand there's the controversy around the Zowie mice because they are expensive and some of the tech specs are a little bit outdated at this point. You know, these mice use a 3370 sensor and the latest sensor is 3395. I personally can't feel the difference. I'm not a professional gamer by any means, but they feel good enough to me. However, the community like to get good bang for their buck, and they don't always feel like they're getting that with the Zowie mice, particularly with the wireless versions, because the wireless mice are up there in price with the Razer Viper V2s, which do have all the up-to-date internals. I think Zowie should consider that going forward, but my take on it is I think they do give you value for money because they are such a good product. Yes, they are expensive, but in my opinion, they are the cream of the crop in terms of mice and products on the market. Early on in my hobby, I was drawn to cheap mice because they were more affordable, but basically that led me to buying lots of cheap mice, which overall, obviously that cost snowballs over time. I think if I was not a reviewer and I'd started my PC gaming journey with an EC1, I don't think I would have to buy another mouse again. You know, it's that good. And that in itself is value for money because you're making that one big payment up front and then no more after. So, you know, in my experience, in my opinion, it's value for money. It's up to you if you think the value is there for you or not. It's your money at the end of the day. I just want to be completely transparent with you all. I've not been given anything as a result of this review. Zowie haven't sent me any products to keep. I'm not an affiliate with Zowie, these are just my thoughts. The only thing I've gained from this video is the opportunity to use the kit that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to use if I wasn't a reviewer. Okay, so I now want to talk a bit about the specific shapes, and I'll start with the S series mice. So the thing I found with the S series mice, you know, this is the only mouse in this box, or the only line in this box that only comes with two shapes. So you get the small and the medium. They're super comfortable. It's probably my second favorite shape in this box. The thing I found with this mouse and the way it kind of fits in my hand is it makes contact with like the outside of my palm. So I find that I get some contact here with the hips on both sides, and I get really defined contact with almost all of my knuckles. So if I want to push it further forward in my hands, I get really good contact with these two knuckles, my middle finger and my index finger, and the way that the comfort grooves support these two fingers, I feel like my hand is all connected to the mouse, even though it isn't. So a criticism I have of the G Pro X, you'll have seen in a recent video probably, is that I feel like my hand is sliding down the right hand side of the mouse. If I grip it in the same way with the S series mouse, my hand just feels right on top of it because it's supported properly by the comfort grooves and the hips. If I pull it a little bit further back, you know, and I grip a little bit more, my index finger comes off the hump of the shell, and I find that I have all three of these knuckles in contact instead, which again is super comfortable. It's really, really good in terms of stability. And I find that because it's not touching the back of my palm, you know, there's space in there. If I hold it like I would, you know, in a game, there's space in there. So I can, if I want to, I can pull it back in my grip just to get some of that maneuverability back that I've complained about with some of the larger models. One of the things I really like about the S series mice is that the back hips feel quite dynamic, quite sharp, if you understand what I'm saying. So they come out quite quickly, which gives your finger somewhere really nice to settle in to. So my thumb sits in really nicely on this side if I want it to, and my finger on this side has somewhere really nice to sit in and to hold on to, which I really like. I really value that in this mouse, and it's because of that hip design, so that quick, that sharp out that it has, that I can fingertip this mouse very comfortably, even though it's a medium-sized mouse. So the S series mice are designed primarily for claw, is my understanding. It's not really good for palm because the hump is just a little bit too awkward for that. I can also find myself fingertipping this mouse very comfortably to good effect. And then the final point on the S series is that it's my second favorite shape in this box. I really like it. And it's also rumored to be the next wireless release, which I'm really excited for. So I'm going to talk now about the ZA series, which in contrast to the S2, which has a little bit further forward of a hump, you know, imagine like that potato shape, like the G Pro X. The ZA series has a more sort of further back hump, and it sits in that pocket of my palm. So I get a lot of contact with the fleshy parts of my hand, which in contrast to the S series is a completely different feeling. And it's really comfortable. You know, this is a claw through and through mouse. I think you probably could palm it and you probably could fingertip it, but it is designed from the ground up, I believe, to be a claw mouse. So despite this mouse being exceptional for claw, it's actually my least favorite mouse in this kit. That's purely preference. You know, it just doesn't suit the way I like to hold my mice. I find that all of the other mice here offer me something that I enjoy more, and the ZA series is a community favorite. So take that criticism or that perspective with a grain of salt. It's just me. It's a really solid mouse, and the community are hoping that Zowie release one of these wireless soon as well, because they don't feel like, at least from what I've seen, that it's been cloned very well, unlike the rest of their shapes. But yeah, quite a good one. Bit of a banger. Let's put that one back in the box. Get in there, you prick. We're going on to the FK series now. And the FK series is different because it's just really low everywhere on the mouse. So you can make contact with the mouse if you want to, but you don't have to. It's a really good mouse for fingertip grip because the hump is so low, and you know, it's got lovely comfort grooves all along the side, so you've got really good options here for your finger and thumb placement. It's super comfortable. It reminds me a lot of the HTX, which is the mouse that I mained before my EC1CW came along, and it's a super comfortable mouse. I really like it. What I've found is that the hips on this mouse are what make contact with my fleshy parts of my thumb and my pinky. So that's where it makes contact. If I claw it, that's the only part of my hand that it makes contact with. And I can, of course, push that forward and get a lot of maneuverability with it in my palm. So I find it to be a really good mouse for claw and for fingertip. What I don't enjoy the FK series for is palm grip, because it's so low. It's not really feasible with the FK series. Okay, then we're going to go on to the EC series, which is my personal favorite. Super comfortable. Everything about this mouse just fits my hand, just, you know, almost to perfection. The way that this hump is designed is it kind of goes slowly from the back up to the like sort of 2/3 point here, which means you can rest your whole hand, your whole palm on it. And everywhere on this mouse, you know, there's a part of my hand almost touching every part of it, which gives me, you know, as a user, super control, I feel. As someone who, like I said before, is probably a bit more of a casual gamer than some of you watching, I find that this mouse sort of helps me maintain control in those sort of stressful situations. I mean, it's probably the heaviest mouse in this box as well, because I believe it to be the biggest. But I've found it to be exceptional. And this is the mouse that I've bought in the wireless version. I've got the EC1CW. I've also got an EC3CW as well. I got that one half price, second hand. Overall, I love these shapes. What I really like about it for claw is you've got this ergo sort of shape on the right hand side, which gives my fingers somewhere really comfortable just to rest on. And the shape on this side for my thumb, it just naturally slides in there. Just sort of fits into that groove really comfortably, and I'm not far away from the buttons, which is something I sometimes struggle with fingertip grip. I have to adjust my grip to get to the buttons. I don't have to worry so much about that on the EC1. So overall, this is probably my favorite mouse ever that I've used, and I absolutely love this thing. Put it back in the box. Get in there, king. So the EC series, they do excel in claw and palm, but I have had good success fingertipping them as well, to be fair. I like the way that there's lots of different places on the ergo shape for my fingers to rest and grip, and it works really well in my experience with fingertip grip. Even though it's heavy, you know, like I said before, it's super stable. Stable? Super stable. Lots of stability with the EC series because there's so much mouse feet coverage. On my two models, I've got dot skates installed on the EC3CW, which gives you a lot less feedback from the pad. And I've just installed some Tiger Arc V2s on my EC1CW, which I think I like that more. But there's a different experience you can get from having bigger or smaller mouse skates. I prefer having more feedback from the pad, which in my opinion, you'd have bigger mouse skates to achieve that. So as a final few comments on Zowie before we close the video, Zowie have been quite slow to adopt wireless technology with their mouse releases, and this has given a lot of other companies a really good opportunity to basically clone their shapes in wireless form. I think the community are now just screaming out for Zowie to do the wireless tech for all of their product lines. It feels like it's well overdue, and we're just waiting with bated breath really to see when the next one comes. I did ask Zowie if there was anything coming up that I was allowed to communicate in this video, and they just told me to sit tight and watch their Twitter page. So I saw a leak on Mouse Review subreddit recently, which was suggesting that the S series would be the next product line to be released from Zowie, and my wallet is ready. I'm definitely going to pick one up. I'm going to get the S1, I think, which is the medium version, and I think that will give me just something a little bit different to my EC1 to play around with when I want to change, because for me, in my mouse shapes, variety is the spice of life. I cannot feel my feet. One of the things I'd like Zowie to consider possibly doing going forward is providing an option to buy the wireless mice without the dock. It's a really cool feature. I really like having it on my mice. I'd probably still buy it, to be fair, but there are people in the community that just want the shape. They just want the Zowie product. They don't care about the dock. But I would expect that would make the price more affordable for more members of the community. I think that's where some of the contention comes from. They're getting limited specs compared to peer mice or peer products, and they're getting products included in a pack that they don't necessarily want or need. You know, it is one more thing to stick on your desk after all. So I've really enjoyed reviewing this mouse kit. If you're interested, like I said at the start, there is a link in the description that will talk you through how to get one yourself if you're in a country that's eligible. Go nuts, man. It's a great time. Thank you, Zowie, for sending it across. Hopefully we can work again in the future. All right, that's it. Thank you. Bye. Peace. Shit. Fuck my legs. Jesus.